Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to 2025, our first live show in 2025, Thursday, January 2nd, 8 a.m. on the dot. Thank you very much for being here. I hope everybody had a great New Year's Eve, great New Year's Day. I'm certainly happy to be back here talking some Lake Show and talking some sports with everybody. So we got a lot to get into today. Thank you for being a part of the show. If you can take a quick second here and just grab your cup of coffee or your cup of tea or whatever the heck it is that you grab in the morning to get your day started. So good morning to everybody. Oh, that's some good coffee this morning. Nice brewed cup of coffee, steaming hot. Thank you for being a part of the show. I got a quick quote for everybody. In the beginning, by the way, I did say that I wasn't going to do quotes every day. I think I'm doing quotes every day. Yeah, I think that's the way we got to go here. I'm going to get into some of your comments here in just a second. But before we get started here, here's a quote. Trust is the question. Love is the solution. Trust is the question. Love is the solution. That's a great quote to have here to start 2025. All right. Hopefully everybody's been enjoying their holidays. I still think a lot of people off probably today and tomorrow. And then sounds like everybody comes back to work next week, January 6th. For us, yeah, we had work to do. I put up what did I put up? A video yesterday, 25 minutes on the Lakers Cavs. But we are ready to go for today. All right, just look at a couple of these comments here. Morning, Big Slee. What else we got here? Good morning, Laker fam. Okay. We got more than just Laker fans on here. But I know a lot of Laker fans. All right, good morning. Yes, I was on Sportsnet looking sharp. Thank you very much. I appreciate that very much. Haven't worn a suit in a while, not going to lie. All right, couple more good mornings here. Good morning to everybody. Hopefully everybody's off to a great start here for 2025. Let me give everyone just a quick rundown what we got for the show today. Lakers back in action tonight. So we'll talk a little bit about the Lakers-Blazers game. Not too much about the actual Lakers-Blazers game. I think probably it's kind of funny looking back at that Lakers-Cavs game. Probably a little overreaction both ways, and I'll get into that. Little overreaction of, it's the Cavs, no big deal. They're a really good team. And then a little overreaction of, that's it. Trade didn't work out. What are Lakers doing? A little bit of both. A little bit of both, which is not too big of a surprise or a shock. Really good article in the LA Times. Dylan Hernandez talking about Austin Reeves. What's his ceilings? This dude, can Austin Reeves be an all-star? That part of the reason why the Lakers traded D'Angelo Russell was to kind of make some space for Austin Reeves to do his thing. So he's certainly going to have that opportunity. His numbers these last 3 games or so are really incredible. I know D'Lo's only not been there for 1 game, so we'll spend some time talking about D'Angelo Russell. Good buddy of mine who I haven't had on the show in a long time, Eric Pincus, who covers the league, covers the NBA, Bleacher Report, for the Bleacher Report. He is basically the guy that you go to when you're trying to figure out, hey, if this team's going to make a trade, and if you're trying to figure out what the numbers are, and does it take you into this apron and that, and what do the Lakers, what's their position kind of left over after the trade that they just made. Eric Pincus is phenomenal at all that stuff. So I'm looking forward to have Eric Pincus on. And really, my main focus with him is what are the Lakers' options moving forward? They made a trade for D'Angelo, or they traded D'Angelo Russell. What do they kind of do now? And we'll spend some time talking to Eric Pincus. D'Lo scored 22 points last night for the Nets. I had a lot of people tagging me on that, by the way. Or I just saw on Twitter that people were making a big deal. I think I forget what account it was, but one account was, here's what the Lakers are missing. And then D'Lo hits a 3. And I'm like, Brooklyn lost by 20 against the Raptors. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll get into that. Rose Bowl. I went to the Rose Bowl last night. Or yesterday during the day. It's a cool experience. Never been to the Rose Bowl before. Was trying to be very strategic. It didn't really work out. I was like, let me wait on buying my tickets. Yeah, that didn't work out towards the plan that I had. And then, Ask Lee we usually do on Wednesday where you could ask me any question. Well, last week, it was Christmas was on Wednesday. New Year's was on Wednesday, which was yesterday. So I know we missed the last couple of them. If you guys got any Ask Lees, feel free to throw them out there and we'll do them at the end of the show. All right, let's get the show started. I appreciate you guys being a part of the show. If you can take 15 seconds of your time and subscribe to the channel. Already closing in on 28,000. Really, really good couple of weeks on this channel. I know a lot of it had to do with some of the hypes of the trade and all that stuff, but nonetheless, I'm just appreciative that more and more people are coming on this channel to say, all right, let me get some sports. Let me get some SoCal sports. Let me get some Lakers basketball. I appreciate you guys making this one of the channels that you go to. So thank you for doing that. Please subscribe to the channel and we'll get started. All right, Pincus coming up in about 10 minutes or so. So overreaction, okay? That's going to happen. That happens in sports. That's part of sports. That's kind of the fun thing about sports. People are going to overreact to things. Lakers lost to the Cavs. And listen, I did a little, whatever it was, 20-minute post game yesterday, just talking about not that big of a deal. It's the Cavs. They got the best record in the NBA. And then I hear other people that are, well, what the hell is going on here? You can't beat the Cavs at home, blah, blah, blah. Let me just say this about that game. And as we get ready for the Blazers coming up tonight, and I think these next two games are perfect for the Lakers to kind of get back on track and give them an opportunity to take some of their new players, Shake Milton and Dorian Finney-Smith, and kind of get things lined up again, kind of organize your papers, I guess you could say. I'll just say this about the Cavs. I wasn't too discouraged about the Lakers losing to the Cavs, but I think it also does show you there are tiers in the league. And we all know that. We all know that, you might look at teams and say, hey, here's the top 4 in the Western Conference, or the top 5 in the Western Conference, or the top 5 in the Eastern Conference. But that doesn't mean that any 4 or 5 of those teams can come out of the East or the West. There are tiers. There are squads out there that are in that upper tier. And if you asked me before the season started, where are the Cavs going to be? I wouldn't have said, yeah, they're going to be 29-4 through the first 33 games. Nobody would have guessed that. But I think there's a couple things I learned from watching that game on New Year's Eve, Lakers and the Cavs. Clearly, the Lakers are not in the upper echelon of what those tiers are in the league. Boston, I'm sure, is better than the Lakers. Cavs are clearly better than the Lakers. They beat them. They're 2-0 against them so far this year. I'd put Thunder, a full, healthy Thunder team with Chet Holmgren, better than the Los Angeles Lakers. After that, to be honest with you, I'm not really sure what a lot of these teams are. How much confidence do I have in Memphis? I think Lakers actually match up pretty well against them. I don't know what Houston is. I know they're young. I know Ime Udoka has completely changed that team around. But would you be shocked if the Lakers beat them in a 7-game set? No, and you shouldn't be shocked. Maybe you want to put Dallas into that. If Dallas is completely healthy, give them the edge there. The point that I'm trying to make is the team that the Lakers played on New Year's Eve, that's a different class in the NBA. And I walked away thinking less. I didn't think less about the Lakers. I just thought more about the Cavs. I just kind of said to myself, well, damn, if that's what the elite is, Lakers got some work to do. So I don't think we should overreact too much. But I said this going into the game, and maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. I said that there are certain games that are on the schedule. At least right now, you're 30, 35 games in, wherever the Lakers are. You could start looking at certain teams and saying, okay, hey, that's a great test. It's a barometer game, like I like to put it, right? A barometer game. Well, every time I've said the Lakers have a barometer game in front of them, whether it was Denver or it was Phoenix or it was this Cavs team, they've lost all those games. So, the game that I take away from on New Year's Eve is the Lakers just are not in that class. It doesn't mean they can't figure out a way to get there. It doesn't mean that they won't be better in a month, hopefully with Jared Vanderbilt on the team. And hopefully some of these guys had a little opportunity to, all right, here's my role. Here's what I do. Hopefully JJ Redick fully understands too all the chips that he has on the table. Hopefully Rob Pelinka went out and said, I'm going to go make another move because this team's not good enough. But that barometer test that we saw on New Year's Eve, that was a different class. And that's what the Cavs were coming into that game. Now this is the good news. By the way, Redick had said something after the game. He said that you basically have to play close to perfect in order to beat the Cleveland Cavaliers. Who would have thought anybody would be saying that? You have to play close to perfect in order to beat the Cleveland Cavaliers. But that's what they are. Give that team a lot of credit. They showed they got, some star power. They got depth. They got 6, 7, 8 guys that can score. That's the one thing that I kind of took away too from the game is they have so many different weapons. Lakers had 3 weapons. It was Austin Reeves, it was LeBron, it was Anthony Davis. That was it. Those were the three guys. After that, there was nobody else that really stepped up. Where for the Cavs, Max Strus was there. Evan Mobley's giving you 20. Obviously Garland and Jared Allen shot, what did he shoot? 12 of 14 from the field. Donovan Mitchell's Donovan Mitchell. They had everywhere you looked. I'm like, Jesus, here's another weapon that they have. Lakers clearly, at least at this point, don't have that. Next two games, I think, are perfect for the Lakers. I'll tell you why. Now, I think tomorrow night's going to be a tough one because it's going to be a second of a back-to-back, and Atlanta's playing some good ball. But here's how I look at the next two games. You're home against the Portland Trailblazers. Right now, I can grab four of you on the chat, and we could go out there and play against the Blazers, and we might be a game in the fourth quarter. We'll lose, but we'll lose in single digits. We might lose by 9. Point I'm making is that I think the game against the Blazers coming up and the game tomorrow against Atlanta is going to give the Lakers a little bit of an opportunity to say, all right, we had to go up. We make a trade. We had to go up against arguably the best team in the NBA. We're not at that class. Let's kind of slowly ease our way into what we think this team can be. So that's what the Lakers got coming up over their next two games. And for me personally, I'm actually excited that those are going to be the next two games for the Lakers, because I do think it's going to give them a little bit of an opportunity to, obviously a little bit of an opportunity to get in some type of a rhythm, groove, however you want to call it. All right, let me look at some of your comments. I'm going to wait because there are a couple other topics that I want to get into as well, but I'm going to wait. I'll probably do it with Eric Pincus when he comes on. I want to talk about Austin Reeves. I want to talk a little bit about D'Angelo Russell, what he did yesterday for the Nets. And for those that are like, hey, why'd we trade him? Year 22. Relax, my people. Relax. All right, let me get to a couple of these comments. Joser Slee, it's been 1 year since I saw you at Crypto during the Christmas game. Happy New Year, and I wish you lots of success with your YouTube channel. My brother, thank you very much. Very, very nice comment. I appreciate that. I obviously don't go to every game now. I go to kind of select games. I just kind of pick and choose and work it out with the Lakers public relations. So thank you. I appreciate the kind words, and I appreciate the compliment about the channel. All right, let me find some more here. All right, let's see what else we have here. It's funny. I saw some of the comments, immediately. And I think this was one of the things that I kind of walked away with too after that Cavs game. Rui too inconsistent. There's levels to this. Yeah, I think what happened after that trade, the Lakers trade D'Angelo Russell. Now all of a sudden, you need these other role players. They got to step up, because if you have games like you did against the Cavs, you're gonna need Rui and Gabe and Max or Connect or Dorian Finney-Smith or Shake Milton. Go down the list, any of these players. After LeBron, Anthony Davis, and Austin Reeves, you got to have. There's no exception to this. You can't win in the NBA unless you got a few people that are contributing night in and night out. So that will be the one area, I think, for the Lakers as we kind of, get a chance to watch them here over the next, let's call it 30 days or so. Do they have players that they can rely on off the bench? Do they have players that they can rely on that are in the starting lineup and are not named LeBron James, Anthony Davis, or Austin Reeves? Because a lot of these other squads that have success, Boston's got depth. Dallas has depth. Cleveland clearly has depth. OKC has depth. If you don't have depth, you're going to have trouble in the NBA. And that's with your three players playing well. AD had a pretty good game. Reeves had an incredible game. LeBron had a pretty good game. You had those three players all contribute. You got to have guys, the Ruiz of the world, the Gabes of the world, everybody else being there as well. All right, let's see what we got here. I heard AD said that D'Lo was holding Reeves back. That's some nerve if true. No, I don't think that's quote. I think the quote was, it was something along the lines of, how do you think Reeves will do now with more opportunities at the helm? And I think his answer was, well, look at his stat line tonight. And this was after his stat line on Friday, or I'm sorry, on Tuesday, on New Year's Eve. And he was basically saying, like, yeah, I think he's going to be fine. So that's what it was. I don't think anybody was taking a shot at D'Lo or any of that. So if somebody wants to take a shot, leave it to me. I'll take the shots. Don't worry. There's plenty of room for me to take the shots. All All right, we'll get into D'Lo in just a little bit because I do want to talk about his night last night, and we'll certainly get into that. All right, as promised, I want to welcome in here, very, very appreciative of his time, Eric Pincus joining us. Eric, what's going on, brother? Good morning. How are you?
Morning to you. I got up early for you. Let's chop it up a little bit. How you
Thank you,
been?
buddy. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I know, when I first initially sent you that, and we're so used to a lot of times when I was on radio, it was in the evenings. And then you're like, Al, what do you mean 8:15 in the morning? Can you let me sleep a little? Thank you, brother.
No, of
I appreciate you doing this. For those who I'm sure a lot of people know Eric Pincus, not only a part of Bleacher Report, the general manager of the sports business classroom as well. This is something that they do, and I really, really appreciate his time. So, okay, Eric, let's start with this. First off, Happy New Year to you, your family. Hopefully, everything's going well. I will ask you this as we kind of sit here January 2nd. Can I get your overall thoughts, just your thoughts so far on what you've seen from the Lakers so far this year? But before I get into potential trades, the trades that they just made and all that stuff, what have you thought of the Lakers?
Well, Happy New Year. Yeah, family's doing well. Just trying to get up early in the morning after a nice festive week of celebration. So
There
yeah,
you go.
we had a good time. The Lakers have been what I pretty much expected of a team that made no moves, over the summer. Like, you had an underperforming product last year. We could debate and argue, which, of course we're going to do. But like last year, they didn't do everything they had hoped to do. And it only got better by adding Dalton Connect, who's a nice rookie. But counting on a rookie is a lot. And then adding LeBron's son, which was great for LeBron. And I think Bronny's a good kid and I'm happy for him. But I don't think that was going to change the outcome of last year. So, it's insanity to do the same thing and expect a different result. If you thought it was going to be different, why? Right? So the team has been what they were last year. Great, even elite in stretches, and then awful in stretches. Bad defensively in stretches, okay, or sometimes even good, but mostly not great. And then offensively, it's not a great shooting team. They weren't a great shooting team last year. The flaws in D'Angelo Russell were apparent, and so he was moved to the bench. And then you had the issue of size where Jackson Hayes is probably your best other big outside Anthony Davis. And I would say Jackson Hayes, I like Jackson a lot. He's probably like a C+ level player. He's probably an 8-man rotation player for some teams, but on some teams, he probably wouldn't even make the 8-man rotation. So, and then he got hurt. And Vanderbilt was expected back, had surgery on both feet. And so, like, if you're counting on a guy to play a major role and he had surgery on both feet, well, maybe you would temper that by doing a transaction to replace what he does for as long as possible. And then the Wood injury was unfortunate, but I'm not personally a Wood guy. I like him. Nice guy. Has had a good career. But I don't think he fits what they do. I think he's like a guy who plays like Joel Embiid in terms of role from his point of view. And I don't know that that's what they need. They need more of what Jackson Hayes does, which is play a role, but maybe somebody who's a little heftier and maybe a little more defensive oriented in a different way. I do think there's a place for Jackson. So you take all that in, and the team has been what you'd expect, like not great. So they finally did make this trade. And so they have at least addressed the defense, and they have gotten a small ball big and a guy who can defend on the perimeter. And they've lost the ball handling guard in D'Angelo Russell. So you give to get and you create other problems, but they did at least solve some of it. They finally made a move. It's been a long time. So that's my initial take on where we are today at the beginning of the year.
Well, I'll ask you because I think it's a good way of describing it where you said you got to give something to get something. They got better defensively. They lost a ball handler that can go and, drop you 20 on any given night. How much of a loss do you think that is? I mean, if you're do you think as we go through the rest of the regular season, are there going to be a lot of times where we might be sitting here or you and I might have a conversation, we see each other before a Lakers game, and we're saying, man, they're really missing what D'Lo brought to the table? I will say this. I, have been very vocal that I'm a fan of the trade. I think this is the right trade for the Lakers, and whatever they lost with D'Angelo Russell, I think they'll be okay. But in your opinion, how much do you think will we look at that D'Lo trade, and will there be more nights than not where you're saying, man, they could really use another scoring punch?
Well, there's 2 seasons, and if you're the Lakers, you're playing for the second one, right? Everything you do in the first season is to position yourself for the second. You want to be playing the best basketball. You want to have home court advantage for as long as possible. You want to avoid the play-in, and you want to be able to compete against any team and win a championship. And not every team will say that. The Kings, who are struggling this year, they hadn't made the playoffs. I'm aging myself here, but my youngest daughter is a senior in high school, and I could say basically for her entire lifetime, the Kings have never made the playoffs.
That's right.
They finally did a couple years back, but they haven't since, and right now doesn't look great. So for them to make the playoffs, that's a different question. But this is the Lakers, who have a different approach. They're competing with Boston for the all-time lead in championships. Boston just took a notch. Boston is among the favorites. We could debate if they're the favorite, but they're among the top 4 teams in the league and had real chance to extend that lead over the Lakers. So if we're talking about D'Lo, sure, you'll miss him on a night in the regular season, but will you miss him in the playoffs? And I think that is why he was expendable, why he had been expendable after that very first playoff run, where they saw okay, the way his style of play works. Number one, he's super talented and skilled, great shooter. Slight. He was drafted at 6'5". He's now 6'3". And that's because of the rules of how they measure guys. They used to measure guys in shoes. And he's a 6'3" that's closer to a 6'1" than he is a 6'3" closer to a 6'5", right? Because he doesn't have long. Dennis Schroeder has 7-foot arms. And we could debate. Certainly, I would argue that D'Lo is more skilled, certainly as a shooter, and a little bit more creative as a creator than Dennis. But Dennis is I'm going to go after you and get up in you and make you uncomfortable. And I don't think anyone's ever been uncomfortable by D'Angelo Russell's defense. So the defense was lacking. And then also his game, D'Lo would talk after games about how great a career he's had for somebody who's really so slow. And he was very open about I'm not as athletic as other guys. I'm not as fast, so I have to do it in different ways. The problem is I don't know that translates to the playoffs, where everyone gets more physical. The schemes are set up as such that teams, the coaches, the NBA has the best coaches in the world. And by the time you get to the playoffs, they have an army of people analyzing what you do throughout a series leading up to a series. They don't have that during the regular season because you're just trying to get through games. Even if you had a great scouting report, which they give the players scouting reports, but they have a walkthrough. You don't have time to game plan team by team the same way that you do in the playoffs. And so teams take D'Lo out of the game. And if you look at his postseason shooting numbers, the guy who's a 40% shooter last year is a 30-something, 31, 32% shooter in the playoffs. And so if that's his main skill and it goes away in the playoffs and he doesn't defend, and you want the ball in LeBron's hands anyway, or Austin's at this point, then you gave up something that it doesn't matter if you have a Tuesday night in February or March where, maybe someone's hurt, or Austin misses a game, LeBron misses a game, and the team's short one ball handler. Now we it's January. The team has about a month and a few days to make another move. You have Gabe Vincent, who is technically considered a point guard, but is closer to the KCP Avery Bradley style of point guard, which is not really creating for others, just bringing the ball up. He's like them, good defenders, smaller than KCP. Avery wasn't that tall, but he's not as long and lengthy, but in the similar vein. So they don't have that creative playmaker. I think that requires Austin to be able to do what he's doing the last few days in the playoffs against greater scrutiny from these defenses. And that's an unproven commodity. We just don't know if it'll translate at the same level. Odds are it won't translate at the same level. It has to translate at a good level, though. And then LeBron is LeBron. And so he's 40. He's an incredible creator, but it can be predictable when he has the ball and the offense is stifled. and stuck and no one's moving. And we've seen the Lakers offense die at times with LeBron dominating the ball. And that's not a criticism of LeBron. It's just, if teams have 2 points of attack that you need to stop, that's limiting. And when the Lakers won, they had that extra point, which was Rondo. And Rondo gave them something extra. Another guy who would wave off and ignore LeBron and create for others. And I mean that as a positive, where the defense wants the ball to go through one channel, through LeBron, because that's what they've spent their entire defensive game plan scheming for. So I would say they're missing a dynamic playmaker, but that in a low role like Rondo, because if it's somebody who's expecting the ball for 25 minutes a game to create, it's just not going to happen. And then we saw against the Nets, not the Nets, the Cavaliers, that still perimeter defense is still an issue. I know that they didn't have Vincent for that game, and Jared Allen went to town, and
Sure.
maybe Dorian Finney-Smith, he didn't finish that game. He's new. He didn't know what he was doing yet. Not a criticism, just guy I don't even think he had a practice. Maybe he had a shoot around. So just throw him in there at an end game situation is a little rough for any coach for any player. So, but Dorian Finney-Smith is not really a big, he is a small ball center, but against maybe one of the toughest matchups for the Lakers in the league and the Cavs, maybe if you have a big, a real big, like a traditional big, a near 7 foot, plodding a little bit, maybe not as fast, but meatier, which produces its own negatives and issues in terms of pick and rolls and such. But situationally, I think that those 3 pieces are kind of what they're missing, but at least they handled their big perimeter forward defense with Dorian Finney-Smith.
So I love what you said about, and I think, listen, D'Angelo Russell's going to, probably not for too much longer, but I think is because the trade had just gone down, and we'll get a chance to see him a little bit in Brooklyn. Yesterday he had 22 points, so I'm getting tagged in some. Hey, look what D'Lo's doing. But I love what you just said about there's 2 seasons. There's the regular season, there's the postseason, and you got to ask yourself, all right, when we get to the postseason, how much of value is D'Angelo Russell? And we've got a chance to see that. We've got 2 playoff runs with D'Lo, and D'Lo is what he is, and I think he will probably go on in Brooklyn and be able to put up some big numbers and let him do his thing. In LA, for what the Lakers are hoping to compete for, which is a championship, I love how you just said, let's separate a game in February versus a game in May when you're at Denver, and what's that look like? And, can you rely on him? Can you not rely on him? So I think that's the best way to put it. You kind of started walking through as well some of the strengths that the Lakers have. I think that's a great example of the Cavs game, which is, I don't know what you thought the Cavs were going to be 33 games in or whatever the case is. I didn't see them going 29-4. I don't know if many people did, but they are truly elite. They have a little bit of everything. They're not just depending on Donovan Mitchell. They're not just depending on one player. They got depth, they got size, they got defensive players, they have bench players. So give them all the credit in the world. But I think what you said about they could use another big, and that's obviously been a conversation, without getting into any players. I'm talking more about the dust has settled after that initial trade, and they bring Dorian Finney-Smith in. They bring in Shake Milton. How are the Lakers positioned? How is Pelinka positioned? How is the front office positioned? How do you feel like over the course of, let's say, the next 30 days or so, and obviously the Lakers made a trade super early before the trade deadline passes, which is on February 6th. How do you think of their position as far as draft picks, assets, aprons, all that stuff that comes into making a deal?
Well, they don't have a ton of flexibility, and it dates back to probably the Westbrook trade of like giving assets to get Westbrook and then giving assets to get out. And so to get to this point, a couple years ago, they went to the conference finals. So they're not far off. You're never that far off when you have LeBron and AD and they're healthy. But the challenge is that they've sort of nickel and dime themselves to almost 0 second-round picks, which are sort of like the lubrication of making a trade. Like it helps make trades happen. That's how they got Dorian. It was or Dodo, I guess, as he likes to be called, with 3 seconds. And so they have left in their so-called war chest of picks 2 seconds this draft, their own and the Lakers. After that, they have none. And after the draft or as of the draft, they could trade 2032. So like after the draft happens, you could trade 7 years into the future. Right now, 7 years in the future is 2031. So at some point, they'll have 2032 to trade. So if we're talking draft day trade, that's not the conversation. The conversation is what can they do in the next month. So the seconds are sparse. The first, they have an obligation this year. It's now going to Atlanta. Originally went to the Pelicans. And you have what's called the Stepien rule, which means you have to have a first-round pick in every other draft, meaning that if they have traded 25, they can't trade 26. And then they've traded 27 to the Jazz as part of the whole D'Angelo deal in the first place, which paid off and got them to the conference finals. And it's top 5 protected. So that means they can't trade 28. So looking over the first 4 years, the next 4 years, they have nothing to offer. They do have 29, 30, and 31. Again, they have 26, 28, but they can't trade them. They have 29, 30, 31. They can trade 2 of them, only 29 and 31, or they could trade 20, 30. So it's
Eric,
one or two.
Can I ask you this? Just I'm going to interrupt for a quick second. Do you think there's front offices around the NBA that value those picks more because it's further out? And is there hey, well, the Lakers might be okay, let's say, over the next couple of years, but we also have no idea what they're going to look like once Bron retires. Is there more value to those picks because they're further out?
That's why they got Dorian Finney-Smith, because the Grizzlies were offering a first, but it was a first in this draft with certain protections that if you look at it, you say, well, we're not going to get a first, or maybe it'll be the Grizzlies right now are good, and they project to be good this year and next. So I don't know what protections were on that pick. So anticipating that, let's say that LeBron definitely plays next year.
Okay.
After that, we don't know. AD is under contract through 26, 27. It's arguable LeBron plays 2 more years. And then AD has an option the year after that. Maybe LeBron wraps it up when maybe goes as far as 4 years, 3 additional years. That's, is there an NBA team's looking at that and saying that's probably about it? Like maybe he goes longer, but what level of effectiveness? The Lakers giving up all the pieces that they have. They have to pay Austin Reeves soon. What is the pathway forward for the Lakers? And it could get very bad very quickly from the point of view of another team. Obviously, a Laker fan doesn't want to hear that, but that's not the point. The point is it's a team trading for the pick that needs the Lakers to be bad, and you're trying to map out when the Lakers will be bad. So maybe 29, you can argue, has more value than 2031, because maybe there's a view that like LeBron will finish around 26, 27, and they'll fall off a cliff for a couple of years or so, and then they'll find a way, because the Lakers have a history of getting to another star. So give them a few years, they'll get to a star. Maybe by 2031, they're good again, but it has value. And there's that uncertainty. Again, that's why the Grizzlies pick was less appealing to a team like the Nets, because it didn't have the same uncertainty. It didn't have the upside. Whereas there is the upside of, this could be a number 1 pick. And that's like, you think about the Nets back a long time ago, they traded a bunch of picks to get KG, not KD, KG, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and they were over 30, and Darren Williams got hurt, and the team fell apart, and the team was terrible, and that's what led to the Celtics becoming Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. And so there's sort of, those guys winning a title now only makes that more in the forefront of the minds of a front office or a team owner that's looking at like, okay, we might be able to pull off that kind of deal with the Lakers. If we can get those 29 and 2031, both those firsts, that's potentially huge. We could get our Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown out of that. And so, let's give up a vet we don't need anymore because we're rebuilding or something like that. Or, that's the pathway in theory to the Lakers getting a deal done.
So let me throw this at you. So I think it's fair to say, most Laker fans and the way Lakers do business and how Lakers rebuild, is it typically through, hey, we really value that 2031 pick. There's always the pressure of, well, just try to win now and you'll figure it out. And you don't have to rebuild like OKC does or Memphis or one of these other squads. Okay, with that in mind, and knowing how valuable those picks are, it sounds like there's a lot of value to. I know a first rounder is valuable, period, but I think the way we're projecting where the Lakers might be in a couple of years, it adds even more value. Um, how how much weight do those picks have right now? That if the Lakers do make a deal and they're giving up one of those first rounders or potentially two of those first rounders before we get to February 6th, what kind of talent has to come back in return for a guy like Rob Pelinka to say, all right, well, I think this is worth the risk, whatever that risk is?
Well, the system has gotten a little more complicated. It was already complicated. And then in 2023, the new collective bargaining agreement made it more complicated, especially for teams that spend a lot of money. And the Lakers are among the teams that are the top spenders. Now, they're not the top of the top. There's about 4 or 5 teams that are the Suns and that are way up there. The Celtics right now are paying for a championship team. And for them right now, it makes sense. For the Lakers, it doesn't make sense to go into the second apron. The second apron basically reduces your flexibility to minimum players. And so they're right under. In fact, they were so close to the second apron, they were like $33,000 under, which is crazy. And now they have a little breathing room where if they traded 2 guys, now they can at least sign a minimum player back. Like, it was really rough. And so there's just a little more flexibility. The 14 is the, excuse me, that's the minimum that you have to get to. You have to get to 14 players. So, but there are pathways forward to, for the Lakers in a trade. The challenge is, you're sort of touching on the leverage point of view. Like, you have the leverage of 2 firsts. What does that bring back? But there's also the leverage that the other teams have, which is that, they see that there's a pressure on the Lakers to win.
Sure.
There's a pressure coming from LeBron James, and that's not a criticism of LeBron James, but like, you have, depends on your point of view, the best player of all time or one of them. Certainly in most people's top 5, I would struggle to not put LeBron in a top 5. And yes, he's 40, so he's not the 30-year-old version of LeBron, but there is a pressure to win now, and the team they're clearly going for it on some level by getting a DFS. And if they're just going to trade out those picks, and I don't believe, and this is my opinion on Jeannie Buss, the owner of the team, I don't believe that she wants to rebuild through the draft. That's, obviously I can't speak for her, but my opinion is that she doesn't want to go through. And when the Lakers went through it before, it was really because Kobe got injured and tore his Achilles. They paid him off of that.
Sure.
And when he came back, he wasn't ever quite the same, and things just took longer. But I think Laker fans are fond of the Lonzo, Kuzma, D'Lo, Randall, Ingram
Nance,
eras.
Clarkson. Yep.
Yes, and that was fun, I think, for the fans. But I don't know how fun it was for the organization to not win a lot of games, to not sell out, which they didn't sell out a lot of those games. And so, from a brand and from their point of view, not for us. And you touched on that it's probably not in their path. The problem is that if that's the case, it's really those picks that are what get you to, if you're going to trade for your next star.
Yep.
Or if you go to cap room and you sign your next star, this is after LeBron leaves. Well, okay, you got 1 star and you didn't have enough money for 2. How do you trade into the second star? It's really hard to win with just 1 star. I think 3 is overrated. I'd rather have 2 stars and a really good team around them than 3 stars. These are all arguable things, but how do you keep building to that when you have no picks? The good news is 2032 comes up, and then another year, 23. You start to add, but at some point, it's like this cycle of never having picks. It puts you in a pick poor position. It's kind of like what they say, like being house poor, where you got a beautiful house but no furniture. You have to be, the Lakers have to worry about that, but it's not today's worry. So these are like the competing factors. And just, to wrap up this kind of issue, before we start getting into the names or the ideas of what they can get, they have to stay under the second apron this year, but that's not what you look at in your fake trades. And, I write for Bleacher Report. They love they love me writing fake trades. It's literally like probably the biggest draw that in terms of, clicks and such like that. And for me, it's really fun.
By the way, one of the trades, and I was looking back at some of your stuff. The trade for DFS for Dorian Finney-Smith, Shake Milton, you had kind of a trade proposition out there. This was, how long ago was it? But it included those.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago. It wasn't that long.
It
was basically half of the trade. Yeah.
Yeah, it included those two players. I know Schroeder was a part of it as well and everything else, but continue.
Yeah, yeah. And I will say that, like, just to throw, like, Dennis was killing it in Brooklyn and he's not killing it in Golden State. So for those who are really focused on D'Lo killing it in Brooklyn, like, yeah, give a good player a zillion shots and the ball and let them do whatever they want. They're going to put up great numbers, but you're trying to fit into a team concept where you're not the guy. That's the harder part. And so, when you start to target who you're targeting, the Lakers have to, one, stay below the second apron this year. That's going to happen. That's not a problem, but next year is really the issue. And that's, people are like, oh, Cam Johnson and, all these names that are, Kyle Kuzma, guys who are making $20+ million next year. And it's like, well, is LeBron taking a huge pay cut because he can opt out and take less? He took a little bit less this year, but is he taking like 40 million, 45 million? Because the Lakers next year, their budget, if LeBron opts in, their budget's about 208 million, which is crazy compared to like where the budgets were 5, 10, 15 years ago. But you've got AD, you've got Rui, assuming Dorian Finney-Smith opts in at about 16, you got Austin, Vanderbilt, Vincent, Christie, Connect. Shake is basically the minimum anyway. So yeah, they could get in or out of him. Bronny, cheap, $2 million. If you're adding in a player of any real salary, it's going to be a problem. So their budget right now, they're about, because you have to factor in, they have to get to 14 players. Let's say that they're at about just under 200. So they've got like about 8 million right now. I'm saying with the roster that they have right now. So if you're adding 8 million next year, you put in a Kuzma. Obviously, they got a wing. They got Dorian Finney-Smith. They're probably not going that path. But I'm just saying salary-wise. Let's say he's 20. Let's just make it simple, 20. Well, that 20 is more than 8. And it's not going to work unless LeBron is taking a pay cut or Finney-Smith is gone or it's cheaper, but you just trade. So it's not just go get a player and call it a day. It's get a player that fits economically, which means it's got to be like if it's not like a $5, $6, $7, $8 million player, and you don't want to use all your flexibility. So it's really got to be like a $4 or $5 million player. Then it's like, well, okay, can you get out of Vanderbilt? Well, the guy hasn't played in 2 years basically, and he has 3 years left. So, you were talking about other teams and their interest in the pick. What is another team's interest in a guy who's getting not just doesn't play and is owed 3 years? Interest would be minimal to aggressively don't want. That would probably be. So he's not really movable. They can move Vincent, arguably, who has 11.5 next year. But he is one of the few, like, that's the position they need to upgrade. Not, now Gabe is not a great offensive player. He's been struggling to hit shots he missed most of last year. He's hurt right now, a little bit unreliable in terms of health and offensive performance, but he is a very strong defender. Though he's not like the tallest player. He's the shortest guy on the team at this point outside of Bronny. So, yeah, that's the issue. Who do you send out and who you bringing back? And so that kind of immediately we've limited the list of potential targets unless there's a Gabe Vincent trade in there, unless you're going crazy. And I've got some stuff I'm going to write today on, and I don't mind spoiling it. But I have some ideas of where it could go, but I'll let you draw that out of me and see where you want to go with it.
Yeah, I think the only, and I think that's kind of part of the reason why I wanted to have you on today was, okay, they made this move. What's realistic moving forward? And I think that, yeah, it puts things into perspective. And that's why if there's so much value in the picks, maybe there is a team that says, you know what, it's worth us to take Vando. It's worth us to take Gabe. I'm using those players as an example. Is there a player or two that you think can work under the current structure for the Lakers and you think would be realistic? Not players they have, players that they're trying to bring back.
Sure. So I would say that, well, like, first of all, I just want to be clear. Like, next year, it's like the second apron isn't, the Lakers don't want to get over it. It's like, if you're over it, all you have is minimums at that point. Mm-hmm. So the team that if you commit, you're committing to a team that not only can win this year, but is also like, okay, we can bring back the same crew, minor changes around the minimum guy here or whatever. But this is the team that not only wins this year, but wins next year.
We're rolling with it.
Right. And you've then traded all your picks, because you only have 2. So 2 firsts, and maybe you trade 1, but 1 or 2 firsts. You have your 2 seconds, which would be good to have next year, just because they're cheap. And it would help the team have flesh out 14 players for them to keep their seconds next year. So if you're keeping those seconds and you're trading the 2 firsts or 1 first, I would argue that the simplest answer, what they say is like Occam's razor, is like go with the simplest answer, is Walker Kessler. And I wouldn't have said that recently. I say it now because they've addressed their big wing. They have a hole arguably at guard. They clearly have an issue at big, which Rob Pelinka acknowledged at before media day, literally like, yeah, we need a big with more girth, more heft. And so what Walker Kessler does, I would say that I've talked to a lot of scouts with a lot of teams about Kessler, and he's polarizing. There's some who are like, yeah, no, he's not very good. I don't like him at all. And then there's some who are like, he's a great rim protector, and in the right situation, you're going to get more out of him than Utah gets. You look at if he's a great rim protector, why does Utah have the worst defense in the league? Well, you blame that on Walker Kessler, who's coming off the bench on a team with a bunch of kids. When I say kids, I mean players in the first, second, third year, and a team that is just out there trying to score and not trying to defend. And that's just not their identity. They're a rebuild. They've committed to the lottery and such. So let's assume that Walker Kessler is available. He only makes $3 million this year. He only makes about $5 million, a little bit under next year. So he financially fits really, really well into that puzzle that I mapped out. The problem is, in my opinion, is that Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck, who run the Jazz, and Zanuck is a sweet guy. I don't know that Ainge is a sweet guy, and I mean that with respect. He doesn't have a reputation. I don't know him well. I've talked to him a few times, but his reputation is not being a sweet guy. His reputation is being extremely difficult and competitive. And great Laker moment was Robert Horry throwing a towel in his face, if you're an old time Laker follower. So he's not giving the Lakers Walker Kessler easily. And the goal, they also have the Lakers pick coming up, so they don't want to make the Lakers better in a couple of years, but at the same time, maybe they don't believe in Kessler, and that's why they're trading him. So if you did Kessler, you could do something as simple as Christian Wood, who is hurt. You're basically upgrading an injured, offensive-minded center who probably doesn't fit what the Lakers are trying to do, for a role-playing big who is as close to Ivica Zubac as the Lakers would get from one of the worst trades they ever made. He's not as good polished a scorer as Ivica, but closer to that. And you can argue that you put him next to AD at times as a starter, and at times he comes off the bench. And so there are, like, AD's best position is center. And a lot of scouts around the league are looking at, like, why do the Lakers want a center? AD should play center. Yeah, they need a backup, but like they don't need a starting center. So you mentioned the Cavs, how they can be a lot of different things. Like They could play 2 bigs. They could play 1 big. They could play 2 guards who are trying to score. There's always one dynamic guard available because you could space out Garland and Mitchell. And then they have a bench and they have good size on the wing. And, like they have Strus they have a bit of everything. And the Lakers don't have a bit of everything. And the one area that this would give them would, like, okay, let's go old school Lakers, 2020 old school, not old school, and go like Dwight, JaVale, double big with AD and have that option. They don't have that option. So that's one pathway. And then this is,
Can I ask you real quick before you get into the other one? What would that cost? I think that would be.
I think it's Wood in just salary. That's what's great from the Lakers' point of view is like Kessler makes a hair less.
What about picks?
The picks are the challenge.
And I guess that's what, because when you said
Right.
Danny Ainge is difficult in this and
Right. So
competitive, and of course, what kind of draft capital would they have to give up?
I think they're wanting one new first, and they're probably going to want the Lakers to unprotect the one that they already owe. The one that they already owe is top 5 protected, or top 4. Yeah, so like it's top 5 protected. So if the Lakers get 1, 2, 3, 4, they keep it. And like the odds of the Lakers by 27 being the worst team in 26, right? So it's not being the worst team in 27. It's
Sure.
this year, whatever, they're playoff team or borderline playoff team. Next year, does it all fall off, or do they last one more year? And from the Lakers' point of view, they probably feel like with this combination of players, they're good enough
Sure.
next year. So if you just remove that protection, it probably doesn't do anything. But for the Jazz, it's like, okay, probably doesn't do anything. But if LeBron, AD miss time and the team falls apart, this could be the top 4 pick. And so that's the risk. And then in addition to that, one of the other 2 firsts. In my mind, that's what Ainge would want. Obviously, I can't speak for him, but that's my interpretation. So let's say it's 2 firsts, but it's really only 1 first. It's 1 first and removal of the protection. The problem is the Lakers can't really protect that 29 first because they don't have any seconds. So I think the Lakers would try to get Utah to give them a second back in 29. And then the protection on that pick, let's see, does Utah has their 29. So the idea would be get the Utah second back, and then it's protection on so it would be top 4 for protected again. But then maybe the Jazz are saying, screw that, we're not giving you, we just want it unprotected. And then the Lakers have to choose, either you do it or you don't. And the thing is, the Jazz don't have to trade him. They don't trade him at all. He's not expiring. Sure. They can wait, do it at the draft.
Inexpensive.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, in that battle of wills and Ainge being greedy, and I say that with respect, it'd probably be, an unprotected first, which if you ask a bunch of scouts, they're going to say that's crazy. And if you ask some scouts, they'll say, yeah, that's a good pick for the Lakers. They're trying to win right now. Who cares? Go get it. So there's no like, oh, this is definitely the answer. It's subjective.
Okay. Final one I'll ask you. And I appreciate how much time you've given us here. So I greatly appreciate you coming on. Based off of what we just said and some of the pressure with the Lakers and what other teams are going to be asking for, do you think by the time we get to February 6th, Pelinka has made another move for a big? Or do you think that there's going to be too many complications to that?
No, I think there's a move to be made, and I think some of it depends on JJ and how he wants to play. And I think maybe on the next 2-3 weeks of like, do they face these Jared Allen type problems like consistently, or was this just an outlier and they're fine and like they think that they have enough? I personally think at a minimum you have to look at a guy, an alternative to Kessler that probably is not as expensive. When I say not as expensive, it's probably like JHS, Jalen Hood-Schifino, and Wood. So 2 players that are not in the Lakers rotation, just to get to a little more salary. But it's only marginally. It's Nick Richards with the Hornets. He's a $5 million player this year. So that's just a tiny bit more than Kessler, but enough that it just doesn't work for Wood. And then next year, he has a $5 million non-guaranteed salary. So you have about the same money next year as Kessler, but then also you can get out of him. And let's say instead of giving up the first, you're giving up 2 seconds. The Lakers and Clippers this year, they're second this year. And the challenge there is that, the Hornets, they have potentially 3 seconds this year. So do they want 5 seconds this year? Probably not. So you might have to, find some other way. Maybe maybe it's a 3-team deal and someone else is getting involved with some second-round picks or something to help them out. But what that does get you is a backup. And Richards is like, yes, he can start if you want to start him next to AD, but the price is less expensive. He doesn't have that upside of Kessler, but he's absolutely serviceable. He's a more legit traditional big who can play in a role. So those are 2 pathways. One is more expensive than the other. And I think it's really, does JJ need someone who can start next to AD, or someone who can consistently start in Kessler, depending on matchups, who is young and a rookie scale player who recent first round pick who has a greater upside long term and could be whatever comes next, the long-term center for the next 5-6 years. I don't know that Richards is that. So it becomes a question of cost, I think, at that point, and then role. What JJ, if he's not going to play Kessler as a starter at all, you might as well at that point go with Richards and pay less. So I think this is what we'll find out over the next few weeks. And so I, can't bank on a trade. I never put money on like, this is going to happen. Sure. But I think the Lakers are aware of their weaknesses. I don't know
the timing.
Yeah, like they did this DFS deal with enough time to evaluate. Like, is he your small ball center and you just play Rui and Dorian at center in small lineups over the course of games and never really go big? Because AD is kind of a small ball big, even though he's the biggest small ball big that the league has probably, except maybe Giannis. Him and Giannis can play that. So these are the kind of questions I think that the Lakers front office need to soul search on. And I think we made the case for it, but I don't know. I mean, what the actual outcome is, we'll have to wait and see.
Eric, that's great stuff, brother. Sometimes we look at things and it's like, this is, just, throw that trade in. It's a first rounder. Who cares? Throw that in. But I think, listening to you kind of break it down, there are a lot of factors that obviously go into play. I love the breakdown of the Kessler specifically, how that can be complicated, how Danny Ainge might look at it, how the Jazz look at it, how Charlotte is a good example. Do they want 5 second-rounders? That's all info that I think sometimes might get lost. But this is what you do on a day-to-day basis. So I appreciate the time, brother. You gave more time than I was anticipating. So thank you for doing that. Happy New Year to you, and thank you for joining the show.
All right, anytime. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it, brother. All right, that's Eric Pincus right there. All right, great stuff. Listen, that's the sometimes we got to get into the nitty gritty. I don't know what you guys want me to tell you. Sometimes we got to break it all down. Listen, his philosophy, and this is kind of what he does on a day-to-day basis. It might sound a little complicated. Don't get me wrong. There are times where I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. The second apron, the first apron, but someone like that, I think, really, really puts stuff into perspective. So thank you to Eric Pincus. I really appreciate him joining the show. Okay, with that in mind, as we kind of come to the close of the show here, I'm going to actually look here. Let's take a look at a couple comments here just real quick. Lakers in Hawaii. Happy New Year, Slee. Wishing your channel success. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Happy New Year to you as well. I'm going to save some stuff for tomorrow because I don't want to start getting into the Austin Reeves conversation that can this guy potentially be an all-star and then cut it short. So I'm going to do the Austin Reeves portion tomorrow. There was an article in the LA Times that had come out, and I really want to spend some time on it because I want to get Laker fans' reaction to it. So let's wait on that for tomorrow. What I will do here, and feel free to throw in kind of some last few comments here, and I'll try to get to it. I kind of have to get out of here right around 9 o'clock today. I'm got a couple things going on right after the show, but let me hit one thing here real quick. We were talking about D'Angelo Russell, D'Lo yesterday with the Nets. I was seeing some highlights that were out there. D'Angelo Russell, 9 of 13 from the field yesterday, 2 of 6 from the three-point line. I actually like that Pincus and I had an opportunity to get into some detail, not too much detail, but enough there to kind of just talk about how, okay, we do understand that D'Angelo Russell can be a threat. He's probably going to put up some numbers there with the Brooklyn Nets. But if you ask me, I don't really care what he does with the Nets. I really don't. Let the guy do his thing. He had 22 points. What do you have? Assists, 8 assists. That's a good stat line for D'Lo. Lakers are fine. I think there was a reason why they moved on from him. I think we all know that. I think we all understand why they moved on. They do need a more defensive presence. Are there going to be nights that you say, hey, Lakers could have really used a D'Angelo Russell tonight? Sure, that's going to happen every once in a while. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to lose sleep. And I know I've said this before on the D'Lo front. So those that have tagged me on, look what D'Lo did for Brooklyn. They lost yesterday, 130 to 113 against one of the worst teams in the NBA, the Toronto Raptors. So I'm ready to turn the page on D'Lo. Again, are there going to be times where he could be of benefit? Sure. Are there going to be times where we might look at him and say, hey, the Lakers could have used him on this night or that night? That's going to be up to a lot of those other players to go make it happen. But I do think at the end of the day, they will, taking the philosophy of a team that can be more defensive presence, have guys when you get into the postseason that you can rely on more, I'm going to be more worried about. D'Lo is the worst defender in the NBA. Okay, relax here. Okay, Relax. D'Lo can't guard my 90-year-old aunt. I'm going to tell you something right now. Your aunt has better defensive abilities than you're giving her credit for. All right, let's see what else we got here. Let's read a couple more of these, and then we'll call it a day. I am going to have to get into some of that stuff that I didn't know I was going to go that long with Eric Pincus, but if the conversation is good, then I'm going to keep having the conversation. But there are some stuff that I'm going to follow up on tomorrow in regards to what he was saying about Walker Kessler, what he was saying about the structure of the Lakers, how much they would give up. We'll get into the Austin Reeves stuff as well. And then, of course, we're going to have a game to react to with the Lakers and the Blazers. Okay, that is all I got today. I have to leave today right on the dot at 9 a.m. So we'll get into some of the stuff, like I mentioned, that we didn't get into today. I appreciate you guys being a part of the first show in 2025. Thank you for all your support so far last year and then coming into this year as well. Please do me a favor, subscribe to the channel. I'll be back on tonight after the Lakers take on the Portland Trail Blazers, and then back on tomorrow starting at 8 a.m. Thank you, everybody. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. See you tonight after the Lakers take on the Blazers.